I am Stephanie Lopez, and today we're going to be tackling the topic the shift in spiritual engagement, understanding young people's disconnect from church. With a significant number of young adults stepping away from traditional faith communities, it's critical to understand the reason behind this trend. Are they seeking more meaningful connections? Are they questioning beliefs that no longer resonate? Join us as we explore personal stories and insights in this shifting landscape. Today, my guest is Darren Pinnock.
So, good afternoon, world. I'm Daron Pinnock. I'm 32 years old. I am married, gainfully employed, and looking forward to engaging in this interview.
Amen. Before we delve into the into our conversation, I'm going to just start off with a brief prayer. Heavenly Father, we come to you, Lord, because you are God and God alone. And we give you praise, Lord, for this conversation. I ask, oh God, that you be the center of this conversation, that you steer us, and that from both of us, Lord, you will elicit thoughts that will impact someone listening. To you all the glory and praise belong. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Darren, your own personal opinion, what factors do you believe are contributing to the decline of young people attending church?
Well, personally, I believe that there are many factors that contribute to young people not being engaged in church anymore or not feeling drawn to the church anymore.
Mhm.
I think it was my wife that said it best. She got it. She said she got it from a podcast or something like that a long time ago. A quote that says, "Every generation must have an expression of faith that is relevant to its time." And I think that's one of the main things that's an issue in the church today. So this is not to say that the message should be watered down or should be tainted in any way, but I strongly believe that the message isn't presented in a manner where it is able to be received, right? And if you want, I can elaborate on that now or later. I think the other topic or the other main issue is I think a lot of young people look on the elders in the church now and they see a lot of hypocrisy.
Ooh.
They see a lot of things that don't necessarily apply anymore. And so they start to question, because back in the day, persons were just given instructions as to this is how you must operate, etc. And no one questioned anything. Now we're at a space where information is readily available. And so people are starting to do their own research and question a lot of things.
Yes.
And when you look on at the quote unquote Christian of today and you see how they operate, or even look into the lives of the individuals that are willing to crucify you for the smallest transgression, and you realize they're doing the same thing, you kind of understand why young people pull away from the church. Because sin is everywhere. It's just that it seems to be covered up or hidden better within the church. So those are the two main factors, I believe.
Yes. So actually, so what you're actually saying is that young people, the older generation, are not setting proper examples for the younger generation to follow. You're seeing hypocrisy among them.
I've seen that personally, and there are many others that can attest to that.
And also, you see cultural shifts then. People,
Cultural shift as well too. So, all right, going back to the expression, the expression point that I was making. So even within the songs that were sung at church, right?
yes,
Uh, Decades ago, you'd have what we call Negro spirituals, like "Wade in the water," and then it comes up to "Some sweet day I'm going away," and press along things until it gets to a point of "What type of church is this?" But now you find that we're in a different era, and I don't think, and right throughout the different generations, you could see where the dynamics of music changed, right? But the message remained the same. Now, I think what's happening is that it's just the same thing. There is nothing that appeals to the younger generation. Again, not saying taint the message, but saying there is no expression that is relevant at this time.
I agree with you. So there's a cultural shift and there is also change in values,
You
right?
could say that. You could say that.
It's because as you quote you refer to those songs, and those songs were actually from their old Negro spirituals, and they had great effect on slavery.
Yes. But
So
then you see it was relevant to that time because that was what was happening at that time and it was necessary.
absolutely. But now those music are totally irrelevant and they're still being sung in many churches. So it's a change in values. We have change in values. Now, for my generation, I'm a baby boomer. And the baby boomer is from 46 to 64, right? So you
Okay.
have so they have one. Let me go over this generation. They have generation, the greatest generation, and that generation is from the old folks. They possibly are all died out now almost, from 1901 to 1927.
Wow.
Then you have a silent generation. Those were from 1928 to 1945.
Okay.
Okay. Then they said that they have the baby boomers, like 46 to 64, 1946 to 1964. And then you have Generation X,
Okay.
68 to 1965 to 1980. The idea, though, is that with each of these generations, you find that they have different values,
And they
right?
have different issues. They have different issues that they're appealing to. And if the message isn't catered to the issues that they're faced with, then it's irrelevant to them. So when you're talking about slavery, all right, you had slavery, and the message at that time was about hope,
Yes.
right? And escape and freedom. And
Yeah.
then you transition from that to a different type of persecution when you talk about racism,
Mhm.
right? Or classism or sexism, right? And then you transition from that to, um, in terms of equal opportunity or whatever it is that the issues are. Now we're in a generation where there are a multitude of issues taking place, but the church doesn't seem to, the message isn't catered to the person, to the struggle that the individuals are dealing with. And so you're speaking to them, but they're not hearing you.
I
That's one issue. There's another issue where there's some things that just aren't talked about any at all.
Yes. So there's no relevance to the issues that is being spoken of for this generation. Why young people are leaving. There's no relevance.
Or if
That
they are spoken about, it's sugar coated, it's whitewashed. Sex is a big topic, for example, inside and outside of the church. And
yes.
when you talk about marriage and preparing for marriage and things like that, you may have counseling, but the reality is people act like sex is an awful thing. And a lot of Christians use marriage to validate sex. So you don't actually know anything about your partner. You just get involved with someone without truly knowing. So they see a young man and a young female, they're close with each other, and they start talking. And the first thing is, you guys need to hurry up and get married so that you can do it the right way. This female knows nothing about this man. This man knows nothing about this woman. They just know that, okay, they dress nicely. They come to church every Saturday or Sunday and they can sing because they're on the choir, but they don't know anything about each other. They haven't gone through the process of dating, evaluating, figuring out how they mesh. And so, because there are no systems in place and there are no persons in place that talk to them honestly. And if you talk to a lot of young people who are even married now, if if they should be honest and tell you about their experiences interacting with older married couples, they'll make it seem like marriage is this perfect thing, this blissful thing, and it's the end goal. When in reality, that's where you're just beginning. So there's a lot of cover up and secrecy within the church itself that young people are just tired of. We can find the truth out elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a separate subject that that we can really explore too, because one of my previous recordings was talking about love, eros love, and it's
Mhm.
very interesting. So you see, I understand this is a change in value, for young people now, because they don't view, or we thought, the older generations, we thought, and our marriages, many of our marriages might have lasted because of the values and the cultural thing at the time. But no, things are changing.
Yeah.
Women are not required to stay home and look after the children anymore. They have to go out and work.
Well, that's
So
because of the economy.
it's what I mean. So and now, as you're saying, there are also diverse beliefs and thoughts and that are leading you into questioning the traditional religious views,
You
right?
said eros earlier. You speak Greek?
No, it's a Greek word that means intimate love, romantic love. So, and that person, that pastor who spoke on it, was saying that we should save our bodies for marriage. And when if we do, but it comes from knowing who God is. And then if I deviate, I'll say that if you get to know who God is truly, that he would lead you into a magnificent kind of romantic love, and that will lead to lasting friendships, in other words. So that's a separate thing completely.
Yeah.
But yes, I understand. Yes, changing values and changing belief systems that causes young people to leave the church.
Yeah.
So and also, so what about negative experiences in the church?
Yes, that happens as well. Um,
I expound on
I
that.
should have said in the introduction that I'm not a Christian, but
Yes.
I grew up in a Christian home, so I have Christian principles. I grew up in a strong Christian home, so my mother was a Christian, my grandmother was a Christian. Different church, well, different denominations, but
It is what caused you to deviate from the traditional Christian values. Your belief system have changed. You believe in spirituality, but not in Christianity.
no, because at some point you realize that there's so much division. At some point you realize that certain things are pointless. And within Christianity itself, there's so much division across the different denominations. So that's one aspect of it. Again, there's also the other issue where people talk about meaning being lost through translation.
Yes.
That's another issue that a lot
Questions
of
there.
individuals have. So you have, you poison the head of a stream. Everything that comes after will be poisoned. So people generally talk about the early church and how it was tainted and all of that. I'm not going to go into that right now because that's a different topic for a different day. But the topic that I'd focus on now would be just the variations across the different denominations and just realizing that arguing over certain things doesn't make any sense. I'm Deron Pinnock, right? But there are some individuals that refer to me as Mr. Pinnock. There are some that will call me Deron. There are some that will call me by an alias. Um, some people refer to me as dad. Some person may refer to me as husband, as brother, as son, right? Those are all titles, but I have different titles and different names. If my name was George, for example, and I went to a Spanish speaking country, someone would probably refer to me as Jorge because that's how they would call me there, right? So things like a name are trivial. If God is universal, whether you say God or Father or Lord or Almighty, Jehovah, it really shouldn't matter.
So there are big questions then. I've often heard that too. In other words, they say God is, there's only one God, and you just need to worship Him, and the way you worship Him shouldn't matter.
Yeah, and when you hear Christians asking other Christians what church they attend, what's
Yes.
relevant to that question?
Well, that's another question that I'll have somebody else come on the program to answer. But I understand where you're going with that. The different denominations are confusing young people and they're not being able to answer why so many different. And I know, for example, in Jamaica, I think Jamaica has one of the highest churches, number of churches in the
Per square
world,
kilometer. Yes, the highest number of churches per square kilometer.
square kilometers. So when you have so many different churches, you question, everybody questions why so many churches. And it seemed to me that everybody, you could also maybe say that most people are speaking or preaching something slightly different, as if God is not the same God, right?
It's about income. It's about offering.
So this is how you look at it. It's all about money.
At the end of the day, it's not the words that you use that's going to save you. I mean, if there is a God, and I'm not saying if as a sign of doubt, but as a conjunction merely. If there is a God, then at the end of the day, it's not your words, it's your works, it's your actions. And there are going to be many persons that are going to come and they're going to say a lot of different things. Bible speaks about false prophets, right? It's what church I attend or don't attend is irrelevant. What is relevant is the personal connection that you have, the personal relationship that you have with the Almighty, right? And once you and your family have that personal spiritual connection with the Father, then everything else is just noise.
And that's something somebody else will answer. Do they feel that way? Do they think that you have to have a special church? I question that even in my generation. I think many of us do, and many people in generations before might question that too. Why is it that we have to worship in so many different ways? Isn't it one God?
I don't know.
Let's move on to another question. What do you think about technological influence?
Well, with the advent of social media, I think more people have voices. And personally, I don't think everyone should have a platform. I think there are a lot of persons out there that are encouraging degeneracy in our generation and in our society at large. I don't think all of those persons should have a platform. So that's a big part of it. But also individuals with this technology too, we have a lot of individuals that are now able to do more research on their own. So no longer is it a case where you have to get this information from this source or this person is the only person with the information. Many generations ago, there was probably one Bible in a community and this one person had it and everyone had to go to church on Sunday to hear this person read specific sections that were cherry picked from that Bible to say this means this means this means this, therefore. Until it got to a point where now Bibles were being issued out in schools, where now we're at a point where everybody can do their own research online. So there
So
are two different sides of it.
there's a big shift there. And they have the different media resources. They have TikTok.
And you're being fed with so much negativity as well too.
Yes, so much negative because you don't know. Maybe you don't. Maybe they don't know who to listen to, who is speaking truth.
Not just about Christianity, but negativity in general. Like secularism is just everywhere in your face. So and it looks so attractive. So there are a lot of persons that are drawn to that.
If you wanted to go back to church, what are some things that would encourage you to want to go to church? What would it take you to go back or to encourage other people to go into church?
Genuinely speaking, right now, I'm on a different path. I have my own little journey that I'm taking now. So I, at the moment, have no interest in going back in church. Not saying that it will never happen or it would never happen,
Yes.
but personally, I'm dealing with something different. As I said, it's a personal relationship.
Mhm.
So that's that.
So
As for
let's
church,
speak hypothetically then.
come on, as for churches, wanting to encourage young people to become members or to stay, I would say more activities that are geared towards the youth. When I used to attend church, we used to do sign language. We used to have um, Pathfinder, which is something along the lines of cadet or scout.
Yes.
We used to go on camping trips. We used to have a lot of activities, right? I don't know if those things still happen within the churches. I can't say for certain, but engage the young people in that way. That's a start. Another start would be give genuine advice.
Yes.
I think a lot of times young people feel dismissed when they ask questions of
Yes.
elders in the church. And I don't know if it's because of a fear or an inability to express, but
Yes.
oftentimes you will ask questions, genuine questions. So let's say I'm a young man in the church and I'm struggling with something, and I come to you as an older brother or an elder or an older sister seeking advice for this thing. Hearing pray about it is not a sufficient response.
Yes.
Hearing God will answer your question is not a sufficient response for young people today. And this is not to say that you shouldn't pray about it or God won't respond to you,
Yeah.
but I've already prayed about it. I have been praying about it. I have been struggling with it, and I'm coming to you for help.
Yes.
I don't need to hear God will answer me. I'm coming to you as a mother, as a father, as an older brother seeking advice because you are someone that I look up to. You are someone that I respect. You are someone that has gone through either the same thing or something similar. How did you cope with it? How did you deal with it? What were the things that you learned, even if it wasn't the same experience? You are 10, 15, 20, 30 years my senior.
Mhm.
So you've been on the earth longer, you've had experience.
Mhm.
From your own experience, as also your spiritual background, advise me. And because so many times we feel like we've been dismissed,
Yes.
we just turn away from it. So the advice would be if you don't know, you can say you don't know, and we respect that. Let's find out together. But just saying God will answer you, or God will this, or it will be revealed sounds dismissive, and it sounds like you don't really understand the issue that the person is going through. And maybe it could be trivial for real, but in this moment, it doesn't feel trivial to the person that's going through it.
Understand. So they're not number one thing. Then there's no encouragement. There is no. They don't know how to advise. You can seek advice from them.
Not
Don't
that
have.
there's no encouragement, it's just the responses don't seem practical or helpful
You know.
at times.
I'm going to say this that maybe they themselves cannot advise.
No, I wouldn't say that. All right. If I talk to, let's say, because I don't know your marital status, right? And this is hypothetical, right?
Yes.
Let's say you were married, but you went through a divorce, and I am newlywed,
Yes.
and I have a baby marriage. So my marriage hasn't gone anywhere yet. It's a young marriage. And I come to you for advice. You probably won't be able to tell me everything to do. But based on your experiences, you know, if you're an honest person and you can truly evaluate yourself, you know the things that went wrong in your marriage. You know what you did or what you didn't do. You know what your partner did or what your partner didn't do. And even though you're female and I'm male, you can give me solid advice. It may not be perfect, and all the things you tell me may not necessarily apply to me, but there is some knowledge that I can gain from interacting with you.
Yes. So that is important.
And the
That's
fact that I came to you and I trusted you enough to come to you means something. It should mean something.
so there is no relevant advice that they can offer.
It doesn't feel that way, and young people feel dismissed. They don't feel connected.
Yes. Understand that. Um, and you did mention about relevant programming like basketball and stuff like that. They should be able to offer camp trips and that fostering um, a more inclusive atmosphere.
Camaraderie and a connection.
So I'm going to make you make one statement before, or maybe I make it for you. So primarily, young people then are seeing church as a place where they collect money. They do that, but they're not offering the services that the churches should offer. Some of them,
Okay.
because all churches then should be offering some of those services. You shouldn't have to wait from Sunday to Sunday to get a word of advice from the pulpit, right?
Oh, you shouldn't have to.
Mhm. What about if they were encouraging participation in leadership?
Wow. Ah. That one, no.
You think that would encourage young people to want to go? Because they know, yes, the young people would understand the whole leadership hierarchy and maybe see a way in which they can influence some change.
Yes and no. Some people don't like being put on the spot. So if you have a system in place where people can feel included, then that's great. I know visitors normally feel embarrassed when they're asked to stand when they just enter a new church. They ask all the visitors to stand.
That's the second person I've heard saying that.
It's embarrassing because it's you feel like a black sheep.
Really?
Yes. Even when you are a member, because even when I was a member of a church and I visited other churches, when you're asked to stand, you feel singled out, especially if it's a massive congregation and you're maybe the only person or one of two persons standing, and then there are all these eyes on you. Yeah,
Wow.
it can be
I,
intimidating.
you see, I would think that that's not a bad thing. So it's good to hear that from you
Yeah,
because, yes, it's good to hear that from you. And it's the second young person I've heard saying that they
it
don't.
can be scary. It
Yeah,
can be scary. Imagine being called in an environment where you're not familiar.
yes.
You're scared to be there. It's the first time you're being there. And you're asked to stand and everybody's staring at you.
I think that when they do that, though, let's see if this is valid. I think when they do that, they are trying to make you feel, well, the intent, anyways, is to make the visitor feel welcome. And then the other congregants will see who they are and be friendly to them, welcome them. And I think that is really the intent.
Yeah, the intent is to know who the visitor is, but
Yeah.
when you do it that way, I don't know if there's any other way to do it, but when it is done, a lot of persons,
Feel invited.
myself included, feel intimidated.
Wow. That's good to know that. What if they were providing, I think, community projects for, if they were able to provide community projects for young people to do, or learning environments? I think that is something churches should do.
I mean, the church should always be engaged in the community. To what extent, I can't say. Something just came back to me a while ago, the leadership thing. Every church has their own stance as it relates to leadership. Because there are a lot of churches that believe you have to be ordained or you have to be baptized in order to fill certain roles. So,
Absolutely. I have seen that too. But
so
I have actually, I know of that where they want you to be a member of the church before you can participate. That's before you can participate. For me, or for some people I know, it would rather to know what the church is all about before you commit. Is that how you feel? Somebody else has said that.
it's not necessarily knowing what the church is all about before you commit. Because you won't always see the end before you start.
Yes.
But it's tricky because there are some churches too that believe that, for example, females can't fill certain roles as well.
Another
So
thing.
that's another segment, another thing for another day.
So,
Um,
so if you're a female, you think twice before you attend. If you have ambition to do anything significant in the church, and you like the church, but you are a female and you see you would be intimate, you would not be able to get there. That is a discouragement. So I guess the converse of it would be this question. In what ways do you think the churches could better engage young people and attract them to attend services?
to retain young people, I think the main thing should be retaining the young people that are currently there.
Yes.
A lot of churches too, the landscape of those churches, you find that there's this big age gap. So you will have a lot of the congregation around 40, 50 up, and then there's this huge gap. You may have a few persons in their like mid 20s, and then after that, it's just
Babies.
baby babies.
Yes.
And you find that happens constantly, and the babies are usually the children of the persons in the mid 20s. And I I think when the the babies get to a certain point, because they keep asking relevant questions and not getting genuine answers, they turn away from it. I think at some point, when you become one or two of the only persons from your generation left in a church, you don't have anyone to connect with. And so you keep finding people leaving. Even if new people come in, because there's no one their age for them to relate to, they end up leaving just the same. So the activities should be geared to retaining the younger persons that are there and putting them in leadership roles, getting them engaged. And so they will bring others in.
And you had
You know?
already, you mentioned something so about the technological and societal changes.
Yeah,
So
even in music too. Like there's so many ways that you can appeal to young people.
can you name some of those ways?
Music is one. Music is a very big one. There is this artist. Well, there are a lot of artists that do gospel hip hop, um, reggae gospel, for example, um, drill gospel, and there are a lot of Christians that are against it because Christian music is supposed to sound a particular way and it's supposed to be reverent. But when you think about it, these artists are going into a space where, under normal circumstances, the persons that are in that space would not get that message. And if you listen to the words, the actual words, and not the rhythm, you realize that it's deep, right? Jesus never came to save or to preach to those who are already saved or already converted. And if you look at the persons that he had around him, right? Fishermen, tax collectors, etc. These were the persons that he chose to have around him. And these were the persons that he interacted with. Why? So if you're going to stay in church and just preach to the same set of people that are already Christian, what are we doing?
Mhm. Well, one of the things I know is that young people need instant gratification.
Not all of us, you know.
No?
Not all of us, not all young people. I'm saying us like me young. I'm saying us like I'm young.
We're what?
I was saying us like I'm young.
But you're young. You're pretty young still. Yes, so it says, um, some of the changes, for example, you're talking about music. You mentioned music earlier, and that the music, that the songs that they were singing were not relevant to the times. And now you bring up the idea about the irrelevant music, and it should be relevant to the times that we live
Yes.
in.
So the rhythm now
Yes.
is a little bit more fast paced than what existed a few decades ago, right? And you see it in every genre of music. So if you're talking about rock, if you're talking about R&B, if you're talking about hip hop, if you're talking about dancehall, even if you're talking about soulful music, right? There are always shifts in the music.
And that's a relevant point
It
because
may they may use the same set of instruments, they may use the same keys or whatever, but there is a shift. So why shouldn't there be a shift in gospel, right? Not saying the message should change, and I'm emphasizing that the message has to be consistent and the message has to be authentic and it has to be real from the word. But if you're speaking to this generation, you have to speak to them in a language which they understand, because communication, that's how it works. So it's not just, oh, I'm talking, and you must decipher what I'm saying. No, you need to speak to them in a way that they understand.
and because number one thing I would reiterate is that they are being influenced not by just one class or one group, but they are being influenced by world visions, because the world now, the way how society is, it is more open, so they are exposed to events that take place in all over the world.
Yeah, yes, they are. But that's not the issue. You know, the issue is just when you're presenting it, just present it in a way that they can hear it. That's all.
Yeah,
So
actually, in other words, then those older folks have to get in with the times, because they are always only going to communicate with them based on their lived experience.
Exactly, and that doesn't work. You have to understand that things change over time. Everything changes over time.
So that's very important.
All right, look at politics.
Yes.
The tactics that politicians used years ago no longer work today. Why? Because the needs of people are different.
Yes.
So back then, when you could promise someone a goat or promise them a cow, or you could just give them a few dollars and you would buy their vote, that doesn't work anymore. Now people are voting based on different things. People are voting based on issues. People are wiser. People are actually reading manifestos because they're able to read.
So it's a whole different society.
It's a whole different society. So within the church, you have to understand that
Yes.
the same old thing where you're telling people that they're going to burn in hell forever, and you scare little kids because they have this idea in their head of this red man with two horns with a fork that is going to stick you and put you in fire for 1,000 years. That isn't it.
Wow.
They have to see meaningful change in people that say they're actually Christians. They have to see genuine aid coming from the church. They have to see value in it. And if they don't see the value in it, they're not going to engage with it. But if you're trying to attract young people, which is the question that you asked me, you can't attract young people talking to them like they're elders.
Wow. It needs a whole new education because I'm thinking about myself and the way how I see things. Maybe one of the reasons why my my young people they are not in the church as I would have liked. They would easily go to a rock concert more than they would go to a concert in the church. It's more relevant to them.
It is.
So the traditional service style doesn't work. And they could be there all day, but you could never ask them to go into church. You could never ask to go to church to anything longer than half an hour, maybe.
Yeah.
Doesn't resonate with young people.
And a lot of the churches, it's just about theatrics. The message doesn't feel real.
Wow. You did mention that young people feel like they're judged. And also what about do you think there's an exclusivity thing going on? Like some people feel some people are judged and some people are excluded because of something else. They're unwelcomed.
Not unwelcome. I can think of examples of certain things, but I wouldn't say people are unwelcome. I think there isn't a standard that runs right across the board. So sin is sin any way you look at it, right?
Yes.
And it's all spelled the same. I think the only sin that is specially provided for is blasphemy. Outside of that, all sin is sin. However, you will have persons in the church doing certain things, and then you'll have appealing to the young ladies. You'll have a young lady in the church that gets pregnant, and you find that when she's most vulnerable in her time of need, in her time of wavering faith, she's ostracized by the church. So
Yeah.
she's no longer able to sing on the choir. She's no longer able to sit up at the front. She has to sit around the back in shame because the result of her sin is visible, and therefore she's treated a particular way. Whilst you have other individuals in the church doing the same thing. Quite possibly another individual in the church engaged with her and caused her to be in the state that she's in. But she's the one that is being punished. So I see where there has been, and that's just one example. I've seen where there are double standards within the church. That's another thing that young people look at too. And when you treat with your congregation a particular way,
Yes.
and you preach forgiveness, but I can tell you, Christians are one of the least forgiving people. You preach acceptance and you preach love, you preach understanding, but my experience has proven to me that Christians are intolerable and a set of the least accepting and understanding people that they are. Is not what you practice.
Double standards.
Yes, ma'am.
Young people who have become pregnant. And is there any help for them though? They just kick them out of the church, you think? Or they're ostracized. They just feel embarrassed they don't come back.
there have been instances where young people have felt so much shame that they just don't return. And then other persons who may not even be in the same position leave as well because they have observed the treatment of a close friend. That has a ripple effect.
So the principles or whatever the church has is just too rigid for today. What you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that they're too rigid. You have to have principles. It's how you go about certain things, right? So a lot of times it's not what you say, but how you say it. If we're driving and I see a vehicle and I stop to let that vehicle out and that person goes toot toot, they're saying thanks, right? But if I'm driving behind someone and I go toot toot, it's something different.
Yes.
In both instances, I touched the horn twice, but how I did it makes a big difference, right? So you can have principles. Christianity is grounded on principles, but how do we go about enforcing these rules? How do we go about catering to our members and ensuring that they feel safe, right? Because this is something that someone is struggling with. This is something that, right, someone is dealing with. And then
Yeah.
you treat persons a particular way without
But
providing any
one of the
guidance.
one of the principles of the church though is what do you call it, chastity for young women. No sex, no sex before marriage. You touched on that before. But when something like that happens, when a young person, as people, when she becomes pregnant, she shouldn't feel that way. That she shouldn't feel. Are you saying she shouldn't feel bad, or the treatment that she's got should be different?
Children are a blessing, right? I'll lead with that. Some of us were planned for, some of us were not. And everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different. So,
So they should have some counselors then. While they discourage it, they should have counselors to kind of speak with them, and should have somebody to help them, and at the same time address the cause. And because
all right. So you have, I don't know how many children you have, but I know you have a son.
they have three.
At what age did you have your first child?
I was married. I was 24.
You were 24 years old.
Yes.
And when you discovered that you were pregnant, was it something that you were trying for? You were trying to get pregnant at the time?
I was
Get some
planning,
news.
we were planning to have a child.
Okay, that's a little different. But
Yes.
regardless, when you got pregnant, there was any point in time when you felt nervous?
No.
Never?
Mm-mm.
Not even when it came on to the delivery?
No. Why? Because I had a husband who was very caring and very good. He's passed now, he's dead now, but I had a good husband and a good friend in
Okay.
him. So I didn't, for myself, I didn't experience any of those. I was brought up in the church, and in my time, remember that I am a baby boomer. I didn't experience, we were expected to be a certain way.
Mhm.
Um, of course, no sex before marriage. I can't say that I did that, but we knew that we had one partner, one friend. We had to know who that friend is. We got married before we had children, you know what I mean? And it was just a different time. It
No,
was completely a different time from what young people, we, as I said before, we were expected that once we have a boyfriend and begin to have those feelings, the next thing is marriage.
no, but even in your time, there were
Economics,
persons that got pregnant out of wedlock.
yes, they were.
Yes.
But
So
in my for my instance, I think the all growing up in the church, um, focusing on education, focusing it was just completely different from now. That's why I'm so interested in hearing why in young people. Because our go-to place, we didn't have social media. We didn't have
no,
all
but
this number of activities that distract people. Our entertainment was church and school. Didn't even go to parties. Didn't have that.
what I was trying to get across is, and you said your situation is different. At no point you felt any fear, not even when you're going into the delivery. And I wasn't
No,
talking fear of being alone.
no. Not even
Or
when I was going into the delivery, because my husband was right next to me. He
Okay.
was there bearing all the pain with me.
Okay. Now imagine someone who doesn't have any of that or doesn't have a
Yes,
support system.
yes,
All right. This being pregnant, I imagine, because I've never been and I can't put myself in that position.
yes,
Women that carry children are amazing. I imagine it must be a scary thing, or it must be a lot to go through your body going through all those changes. And when you don't have a support system and you're in the church system.
truly.
And if at that point in time when you are most vulnerable, especially if one, you're the person that impregnated you is not a Christian, so you're unequally yoked, or if the person who impregnated you is someone that you shouldn't have even been involved with sexually, because that person may be the
I thought,
pastor or someone else in the church.
yes, I totally see where you're going with this, and
At
I
this
agree with
point,
you. I agree
it's
with you.
scary. And if you're dealing with that on your own, this is the point where the church should be supporting you. So to
Yes,
tell someone that
agree.
all of a sudden they have to hide or they have to stay around by the back or they can't engage in church activities anymore,
Yes,
that's an awful thing to do to someone at that time. No
yes,
one would feel welcome there. No one wants to go anywhere where they're not welcome.
understand. I totally agree with that. So in other words, you have a member who has become pregnant or out of wedlock, or even in wedlock, they need the support of the members still.
Yes, they do.
And
Yeah,
and they shouldn't take it for granted that you're okay, that somebody is there to support. But the older women or men should be there to rally around the younger people in any instance and support them. I somebody had also mentioned that you should also give them a phone call here, check upon them. When the
I
child is
mean,
born in instances, give them a basket.
that goes without saying, I mean, if if even without being in the church, if you have friends that are genuine friends, you call them and you check up on them from time to time.
Mhm.
So that's a given. If you're in the church with persons who you interact with every week and you can't call on any of them or none of them call you to check up on you, what is that really saying?
I understand that totally. I understand that. I understand that from another end. Um, my husband passed away, and I know what happened when he passed. It was luckily I was going, but there were instances when he was sick and before he passed that I felt like the church could have played a little more role. So I can relate. I
You
can
felt alone.
at times when he was passing, I felt like I made many attempts to call the pastor, and I felt like during the whole day, it took him like a whole day before he finally lost his old breath, or 2 whole days. We knew was happening, and I called the pastor at the time, and nobody from the church showed up to console, to pray, nothing. And so I can understand, you know, I can apply any situation at all to a situation where you feel like you were lost and alone and you needed some support, and feeling like the church, being that you have been so much involved in it, could be better support.
My condolences.
Thank you. What are your final thoughts?
All right. So, apart from you being a very lovely young lady and it being a very stimulating conversation, I would say that young people need meaningful connection. They need genuine, applicable advice. They need to feel included and understood. And most importantly, they need grace because we've all come short and no sin is greater than any other.
Yes.
All right.
And I would say, in my final, what I've got from this, young people in addition need access to information, need
Yeah.
help. We also observe that there is a change in religious affiliations. People are changing because of other, they don't have that desire to to go because of all the changes in the cultural diversity, and they need fulfillment in how they worship. For having joined us in the living room.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to go and subscribe to CHRY TV on YouTube, on Roku, on Facebook, on Instagram, and TikTok. You can see us also on our page at chrytv.com. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you again.
All right.